Hello, hello, hello. We've come back from a pay-per-view, and now it's on to the Apex here on the BON MMA podcast. So, just a quick thing about Apex cards, because a lot of people are like, this is a perfectly good Apex card. This is what it is. Get used to it. Be happy. And undoubtedly, this is what we're going to get. This is what we're going to keep getting. But here is my request to the gods of MMA. Can we please get Apex cards with like a nice cherry on top? Like a good main event that's like not a number one contender fight, not I would even say not even necessarily ranked fighters, but like just an interesting, hardcore fan appealing fight, because someone pointed out that the Apex is really just for the hardcores now. It's just content. The casuals can skip it and they can feel completely fine about doing it. And that is the idea. That is what it's supposed to be. And in that regard, I mean, I guess it's doing it, but like, give me right at the top of the card, one really solid, appealing card or fight, and I'll be happy. And unfortunately, we don't have this here because we have Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura, a heavyweight fight at the top of this card. So let's just dive into what we got. Well, let's dive into the warning first up. Everybody, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, I'm going to talk about gambling on this card. I'm going to talk about betting lines. I'm going to talk even a little bit about what I'm going to do. There's a couple here because there's a weird thing with some of the betting odds here where like these are a lot of two true outcome fights. And as a result, this means that if you have a particular lean either way, you could probably find a decent bet on some of them. Because there are some underdogs here who I think are going to win. They're not terribly wide. There's quote unquote money to be made, but do not bet what you cannot afford to lose, because this is MMA and it's an inherently chaotic and unpredictable sport that stuff will happen. Stuff will happen. There's no such thing as a surefire bet. All right. Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura. Talk about a two true outcome fight here. All right. So Marcin Tybura, slow starter, tough as nails guy, but usually takes a beating in the first round. Not a great striker, not a non-existent striker. Comes up with some surprisingly good things, but like he is the grappler in this battle. Absolutely the grappler in this battle. Tuivasa, the opposite. Good striker, working on his wrestling. I think there are some signs in some of his recent fights that like wrestling is something he's trying to add into his repertoire, but he's lost three straight fights. Can't be feeling great about himself, and he's either going to knock out Marcin Tybura in the first round, akin to what Augusto Sakai did, or like Shamil Abdurahimov did. But like Tybura is pretty tough. Like it's kind of weird that he got finished by those two guys, because they're not like, particularly Sakai is not like a notable finisher, and he finished Tybura. It's very, very weird, but he is generally pretty damn durable. And I just think that he'll take this deeper. He'll eventually get some takedowns. He'll eventually get a dominant position, and he'll pound out Tuivasa. But like, he could get knocked out in the first round. Easily he could not get knocked out after that. We'll see. But I can't really pick Tuivasa right now, just in general. So yeah, Tybura by TKO. He is the underdog at -102 to +105, and Tuivasa's -118 to -128. Not really much of an underdog, mind you. This is basically a pick'em fight, but yeah, I gotta go Tybura. Bryan Battle versus Angel Loosa. I'm actually looking forward to this one. So the big question here for me is Bryan Battle at 6'1", 77-inch reach is a massive culture shock for most fighters at 170. He is long, he is tall. What does that mean for this fight? So I looked up a lot of footage of Angel Loosa fighting taller guys, or at least rangier guys, particularly Munir Lazzez and Reese McKee, which are like the two kind of formed fighters he's done that are like longer than him. He lost to Lazzez. He beat McKee. So 1-1. The thing with McKee, the win over McKee, is it was about McKee's lack of physicality, basically. Reese McKee hits somewhat hard and sets up decent counters and everything, but he doesn't have great footwork. He does get bullied around the cage a lot by Loosa. That I don't think is going to happen with Bryan Battle. And Bryan Battle is a guy who's been showing off a little bit new stuff every time out. Every fight out, he's coming out with this new wrinkle, and it's pretty interesting. I'm kind of like legitimately interested to see what he can do. And when he won the Ultimate Fighter, I was like, this guy is not going to be good at all. And he kind of is. So, tip of the hat to him, tip of the headphones. And I'm picking him to win here. I'm picking him to have like a good game plan, to utilize the reach, to be able to reset, to be able to keep this fight at range. Angelosa is not some super short guy, to be clear. It's just that Battle is, for welterweight, pretty long. As long as we're not talking about like, having him fight like Kevin Holland or Michael Venom Page. He's going to have that ability against most people. Likes to throw kicks, keeps range. You could argue that Losa is the most explosive, like, physical striker that he's fought outside of like Trayshawn Gore on The Ultimate Fighter. Or not, no, that was off The Ultimate Fighter. It was in the UFC. But we all know Gore is like incredibly raw and a guy that will probably get burned out because he got to the UFC way too early. But there's a lot of like what Munir Lazez with the jab, with the kicking game, did to Lusa that I think Battle can do. Plus, Lusa does have some cardio issues. He does fade later in fights. I'm going to go with Battle by decision. He is the favorite, minus 175 to minus 196. Lusa is plus 145 to plus 155. Not really going to bet on that one. I doubt it anyways. Kenny Nzechukwu versus Vince St. Preux, good old OSP. You can't pick OSP at approaching 41 years old. Like, that's just all there is to it. Nzechukwu is a really slow starter. OSP still has moments of dynamicness to him as a grappler and as a striker. He is still strong. He is still one of the better athletic specimens that the 205 division has ever had. It's just that at the end of the day, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. I don't trust him as he gets older. So I'm picking Kennedy by TKO. He is a prohibitive minus 549 to minus 700 favorite. OSP's plus 400 to plus 500. There is not really any word that Kennedy Nzechukwu should be a minus 700 favorite. But he is, and I'm still not betting on it. So there you go. Christian Rodriguez versus Isaac Dolgarian. I don't like this fight. I don't like this fight because C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez, has been the prospect derailer. The Raul Rosas Jr. fight, the MSP fights, great examples of this. He's not an amazing physical fighter. There is no wow factor to him, but he is technically well-rounded. He is tough mentally and physically, and he will come in with a really, really good game plan to take advantage of any kind of weaknesses that his opponent really has. He'll stay composed, and he will not be rattled by the fact that, a super stud athlete comes out and starts hitting him really, really hard. He just won't do that. And as much as I like Dolgarian, we haven't seen anything nearly enough about him. Like, he's got a lot of Raul Rosas Jr. in him. He's more seasoned because I think he has a significant competitive background in wrestling. And I think a better athlete. But it's just a lot of overwhelming first round finishes where he comes out and just blows people out of the water. And I don't think you can do that against C-Rod. And if you can, it really, really means something. But when you have 10 opponents, pro and am, who have 2 winning records between them, and before hitting, I can't remember if I wrote that down after, if that includes Francis Marshall. I've worded my notes here kind of weird. Yeah, it's Francis Marshall and TJ Britton are the only 2 that have, how should I put this? Winning records as pros. And Marshall's the kind of guy who was just really kind of a bully prospect. And once Dolgarian was able to just bully him back, he fell apart. So I've got to go with C-Rod by decision. Dolgarian is the favorite at minus 180 to minus 200. Rodriguez coming back at plus 148 to plus 160. It will not surprise me if Dolgarian wins this fight by any means. And I don't even mean that in the usual standpoint of anything can happen in MMA, therefore don't rely on it to happen. But that's just the kind of thing is Dolgarian is this really unproven prospect that has a really high ceiling. But you would think the UFC would have learned about feeding those guys to Rodriguez by now. Patty Kianzad, Macy Chiasson. This is a rematch of a fight from some time ago. Chiasson is more of a favorite than I would probably put her at minus 235 to minus 250, and Kianzad at plus 190 to plus 200. But I don't really see. Well, I shouldn't say that when I'm about to say that like Kianzad's going to lose. The problem with Kianzad is that she doesn't have anything that allows her to avoid the clinch. She ends up in the clinch pretty much every time. She's facing a 5'11" behemoth woman in Macy Chiasson who likes to bully people in the clinch, likes to lock them down, likes to take them down, get their back, get the rear naked choke going on. And Kianzad just doesn't have a way to avoid that. She also hasn't finished anyone since 2014. So any idea that she's going to come up with a dynamic finish akin to like Irene Aldana when she finished Chiasson, it's not really on the cards. So I do have to go with Chiasson. I'm going to say by decision because Kianzad, I think, has gotten better at decision making. If you look at her earlier fights, including the one that she lost to Chiasson, there were like just some really bad decisions as a grappler and as a striker that would put her in far more dangerous positions than she really should have been in. And she's been much, well, okay, maybe not that many muches, but a couple of muches better at not doing that. So I think we go the distance. Chiasson's size and strength and range carry the day for her. Gerald Burchart versus Brian Barberena. A battle of two guys who are 1-3 in their last four. They're both looking in decline. They're both looking like physically they're starting to fall apart at the ages of 36 and 34, respectively. I do have to go with GM3, though. Barberena has a number of submission losses on his record. He does go to the ground because he's not really able to stop you from taking it there. He is the better striker of the two, but at the same time has had a 5.5-inch reach disadvantage to GM3, who is surprisingly adept at utilizing his reach and doing a good job with it, even though his like striking is the most untextbook thing you're ever going to see from a veteran fighter of, oh my God, how many fights is this for GM3 at this point? This will be GM3's 53rd pro fight. There you go. That's insane. It is absolutely insane. Yeah, I do have to go with him to win here, though. Barberena is a guy who doesn't really have any physical edges here outside of being faster-handed, but he's like slow-footed. He's not necessarily the strongest guy on the planet, not necessarily the most powerful guy on the planet, and a guy who predominantly made his career at 170 as well, and is fighting at 185 now as a pseudo-retired fighter. It's going to be hard to pick him in fights just in general. So I got GM3 by submission. He is the minus 238 to minus 250 favorite. Barberena coming back at plus 188 to plus 205. Mike Davis versus Natan Levy. I'm going to preface this with a classic thing for me. I don't understand how Natan Levy's game works. I have picked against him, I think, probably not as much as I'm thinking because he's fought like really not great UFC competition. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm imagining I probably picked him to beat Genaro Valdez, but I'm not going to go back and look. Otherwise, I probably picked Mike Breeden to beat him and didn't. And I definitely picked Rafa Garcia. Dude is like this weird kind of like karate stylist who has gained a little bit of popularity for beating up anti-Semites in the gym lately. But yeah, I think Mike Davis is really good. He's a big lightweight wrestle boxer. I think he made 145 at some point. I don't understand how. Like I'm looking at a picture of this man. This man is a 6 foot tall lightweight. That's pretty tall. And yeah, the idea that he fought Carlos Guerra at 145 it's mind-blowing to me. I think he also fought Sadiq Youssef at 145. Anthony Reddick as well. And his debut against Richie Dance. Now, mind you, that was 2015. Maybe he was smaller then, but like, dude he's got the thick thighs going on. He's got the muscular arms going on. He is ripped. The idea that he was making 145 is maybe the greatest mystery of this card right now. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to be able to manhandle Levy. Levy is admittedly a guy who's never really been finished. I don't think. If I recall correctly, Garcia did not finish him. I didn't even really go back and watch the fight because there's just a world of physical difference. Yeah, he lost a decision. You got to take Mike Davis here. He is a minus 300 to minus 420 favorite. Levy is plus 240 to plus 320. Josiane Nunez versus Chelsea Chandler. I don't know. Josiane Nunez is a 5'2" bantamweight, and Chelsea Chandler is a girl who was so uncomfortable exchanging with Norma Dumont that she ran away. Chandler is bigger. She's a strong physical specimen at 135. These are the kind of people that the UFC kind of has to make good at 135 for this division to kind of get out of its funk. I'm going to go with Chandler by TKO because I don't know, but like there is every chance in the world that Nunez just like does what she did to like Bia Malecki and just knocks her senseless. Like it's just that Nunez is so small that I can't imagine her avoiding the clinch, and like her high watermark of wrestling talent is fighting Ramona Pasquale, who is not a wrestler and is not an athlete. And Chandler, I don't think is a wrestler either, but I think is actually a good athlete. So I'm going with Chandler. Nunez might just knock her out. She's the minus 135 to minus 150 favorite. Chandler's plus 115 to plus 125. I'm picking Chandler, and I'm still not betting on her. There you go. I am going to be betting on this next underdog, though, because I think these betting odds are dumb. O'Day Osborne versus Jafel Filio. Filio, I think, really is getting the benefit of having a really good, scrappy, like scramble fill fight with Muhammad Mokaev, who everybody is, really, really high on. Even myself, I'm high on. I'm not as high as other people are, but I'm high on him. The problem is just that, like, O'Day Osborne's a really good athlete. And I know he's got a lot of losses on his record. I know he's 12-6 or something. But, like, you look at his losses in the UFC, 4 of them. It's to Almabayev, who's really, really good. Big hitter Tyson Nam. There is no shame in getting knocked out by Tyson Nam. I think I went over this last in the UFC 299 lead up, that like losing to Tyson Nam, it means just very, very little. Like he's that kind of fighter that like beating him doesn't mean much. Losing to him doesn't mean much. And then like Manuel Kopp and Brian Kelleher, which is a 135er. Fio does not have a good wrestling game. Like his jiu-jitsu is very like self-sacrificial, or revolves around you taking him down and then getting into scrambles like Mokaev and Daniel Barras did. And Osborne, who is, by the way, 4.5 inches longer and has fast hands and a pretty good range striking game, honestly, should just kind of light him up because Fio is also not a very good striker. He's a willing striker. He's a scrappy striker, but he is not a good striker. And I've got Osborne by decision. I don't know why he's a plus 136 to plus 150 underdog. I don't understand that. Fio's minus 162 to minus 186. Then we get into the mostly debuting stage of the card. Thiago Moises versus Mitch Ramirez. I like Mitch Ramirez. I think he's a good pick. I think he's a good pickup. I don't think he has to like really fix any major issues. He just has to kind of just get better. And he's training with Syndicate MMA. That seems like a good fit. But he's defensively very, very raw. He's very, very open to getting hit and also getting taken down, I think. Like his aggression and his openness, it leads to opportunities to take someone down and to get hit on the counter. And Moises, he's a takedown artist with a good counter game. Also, note here, Ramirez recently dropped to 155. He's taking this fight on short notice. So I can't help but think that this weight cut is going to be a bit rough. He also doesn't have the two things that tend to beat Moises, which is number one, heavy, high-end physicality. Like monsters. You know what I'm saying? Like BSD, Benoit Saint Denis, and Joel Alvarez. Or like very, very, very good technical grapplers. Islam Makhachev, Damir Ismagulov, even Jason Knight. Ramirez is not these guys. He's a good addition to the lightweight division. I'm happy to see what he can do, but this feels like way too big of a step for your debut. And I've got Moises by submission. Moises is a minus 395 to minus 500 favorite. Ramirez plus 300 plus 375, so I'm hardly alone. Josh Kulbau, Danny Silva, kind of the same thing. Danny Silva's coming off the Contender Series, although ironically, one of his losses on the regional scene is to a guy named Kanan Kawaihi, who lost on Dana White Contender Series twice. It's not important to the fight. It's just a weird deal there. The issue is that like Silva has fought pretty low level competition, even his Contender Series fight, which was very, very good. I want to be clear on that. Very good. Both guys got signed, and I'm happy about that. But every time he was forced onto the back foot, his defense was terrible. Like, just god-awful. And, well, I like the fact that he does dig to the body, and he does go upstairs. He's a little bit predictable about it. There's not a lot of creativity to what he does. There doesn't seem to be a lot of power. Like, he did drop the guy, and he has a couple of knockouts, but, like, I don't sense any real power to him. There's some good speed and whatever, but like the way he was hitting Angel Pacheco, am I remembering the correct fighter when I say that? I hope I am. Yeah, Angel Pacheco. He should have finished him with the way he was able to hit him. And yeah, I think he's going to lose to Josh Kulbau here because Josh Kulbau can take the front foot, can work at a decent pace, and can neutralize. Like there's defensive ideas and good game planning and insightful things to Kulbau. And the only guys that have beaten him are Lerone Murphy and Jalen Turner. And Murphy's kind of a monster. And Turner is a hell of a monster. I mean, Kulbau had to fight that man at lightweight. And Turner is the size of a welterweight. So, like, forget that. That's not replicatable for Danny Silva at all. If Silva wins, it'll be cool, whatever. He has action fighter written all over him. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he's going to be having like a bunch of really, really good fights before his time in the UFC is over. But at the same time, I do really wonder if there's enough to his game to actually achieve at this level. I'll go Kulbau by decision because Kulbau doesn't really finish people. Corey McKenna versus Jacqueline Amarin is a fight that I am of two minds about. At the end of the day, I'm going to pick McKenna because if I pick Amarin to win and she loses, I think I will legitimately feel bad. Amarin's UFC run basically is her having a really, really good round against Sam Hughes and then gassing, and then beating Montserrat Conejo Ruiz, who is one, very small, two, incredibly flawed as a fighter, and in no way had a style to counter Amarin, and I picked her to win that fight. I feel bad about that. I feel legitimately bad about that. But I was like just so worried that like Amarin just may only have one round of gas, and that was not the case. But I don't want to pick her against somebody who has like an actual wrestling game, and I don't know if Corey McKenna actually is a wrestler, but she's associated with Team Alpha Male. She's generally out-wrestled all of her opponents except for Kay Hansen. She's a limited striker because she only has a 58.5-inch reach, which is insanely short. I don't even understand how that works. Like, you're 5'3", you're not that short. You are 9.5 inches less reach than Amarim with the same height. That is bizarre. But Amarim's striking game is completely unknown, I guess, in a nutshell. Like, she's a good enough athlete that maybe there's some power and some snap there, but I don't know. And McKenna fights at a pretty high pace, despite her lack of reach. So, and she's hard to take down. She's hard to out-wrestle. She's hard to control. I got to go with McKenna by decision, but like if Amarin comes out there and just destroys her, it honestly won't be that surprising because Amarin has that, I don't know, she has that like Claudia Gadelha feel to a certain degree where like there is obviously an incredibly high level BJJ background there, and there's all the physicality you can ask for, but I don't know if she really has the gas tank, the cardio specifically, or the ability to get constant takedowns. So I can't really pick her here, but I won't be surprised. McKenna is the favorite at minus 125 to minus 128. Amarim is plus 100 to plus 105. And the night will open up with Chad Anheliger versus Charalampos Gregorio. I can't pick Gregorio. Dude has got his wins have combined record of 13-13. Outside the guy he beat on the on the Dana White Contender Series, who was 8-3, and had a horrible third record on like his losses. Never mind his wins. His losses were like can level losses. He seems dynamic. He seems explosive. He seems powerful, but like it's just against incredibly low level guys. He's also got a loss to Christian Rodriguez. So Christian Rodriguez strikes again. Anheliger is not a UFC level athlete, but he is a tough guy. He's never been stopped with strikes. He does have sub losses, but Gregorio doesn't really grapple. Anheliger is a well put together technical fighter who fights at a high pace. He has good game plans, and he usually exploits like limitations in other people's games to slowly like kind of pull them apart and take them to school. So I got to go with Anheliger. He is the underdog at plus 130 to plus 140 and minus 162 to minus 174 for Gregorio. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Gregorio goes out there and just like knocks him out. I'm not going to be. He is very dynamic. He is very explosive, and he is presumably powerful. It's just he has fought remarkably bad competition. And with that, I have like kind of speed run this Apex prediction one because it's a tremendous amount of like absolutely too true outcome fights or fighters who are just too raw to pick, but like do have some of the physical hallmarks that you're looking for in a UFC fighter, and fighting guys who do not necessarily have that because like Kulabao, not a phenomenal athlete, and Helliger, an actively pretty bad athlete, is another example of that. And if you look up even further, you could argue, I don't know. Okay, those are the only two fights that really fit in that grouping. But like, I don't know. There's just so many fights here that they're gonna be messy and just kind of bad. But like I said, Angelosa versus Brian Battle. That's a good fight. That's fun. Dolgarian versus C-Rod will be, I think, fine. GM3 versus Barbarino will be fine. I'm actually looking forward to what O'Day Osborne does against Jafal Filio as well, and I'm actually looking forward to Jacqueline Amarin versus Corey McKenna because like let's see what Amarin's actually got. And I think this is actually really solid matchmaking. So on that fight, not necessarily the rest of the card. So check out the links down below for my social medias, my gaming stuff, and the Discord server where we do the fight simulator, and I will see you after the fights.